In the year 79 AD, the people of Pompeii woke up thinking it was just another normal day. Shops opened. Bakers prepared bread. Merchants arranged their goods. Children played in the streets. Families cooked meals. Wealthy Romans relaxed in villas decorated with colorful paintings. Slaves carried water, cleaned floors, and worked in kitchens. The city was alive with noise, movement, business, gossip, and daily life. Above them, Mount Vesuvius stood quietly in the distance. It looked like a mountain. It looked peaceful. It looked harmless. But inside that mountain, pressure had been building for years. And soon, Pompeii would discover that the most dangerous enemy is sometimes the one people stop noticing. This is the story of Pompeii, the Roman city buried by a volcano, and the day ordinary life disappeared under ash forever. Pompeii was not the largest city in the Roman world, but it was a wealthy and lively one. It stood near the Bay of Naples in southern Italy, surrounded by fertile land, vineyards, farms, and trade routes. The soil around Vesuvius was rich because volcanic land can be extremely fertile. People grew grapes, olives, fruit, and grain. The area attracted merchants, farmers, soldiers, sailors, and wealthy Roman families who wanted beautiful homes near the sea. Pompeii had streets, markets, temples, bathhouses, taverns, workshops, theaters, fountains, public squares, and private houses filled with paintings and mosaics. It was not a dead ruin. It was a real city full of real people. They argued, worked, prayed, ate, drank, loved, laughed, complained, and planned for tomorrow. That is what makes the tragedy so powerful. They did not know there would be no tomorrow for their city. Years before the eruption, Pompeii had already received a warning. In 62 AD, a powerful earthquake damaged the city. Buildings collapsed. Walls cracked. Temples and homes were destroyed. The earthquake was terrifying, but the people rebuilt. They repaired streets, restored houses, and continued life. They did not understand that the earthquake was connected to the restless volcano nearby. In the ancient world, people did not have modern geology. They did not know how volcanoes worked. They did not have seismographs, satellite images, emergency alerts, or evacuation plans. Vesuvius had been quiet for so long that many people did not even realize it was an active volcano. To them, it was part of the landscape, not a monster waiting to wake up. Then in 79 AD, the warning signs grew stronger. There may have been tremors. Wells may have changed. Animals may have behaved strangely. But even if people noticed something unusual, most probably did not understand what it meant. Life continued. A city does not stop because the ground shakes a little. People still have bread to bake, debts to pay, goods to sell, meals to prepare, and families to feed. History often becomes tragic because people live inside it without knowing they are approaching the final chapter. Then the eruption began. Mount Vesuvius exploded with terrifying force. A massive column of ash, rock, and gas shot into the sky. It rose high above the mountain like a dark tree, spreading across the heavens. The Roman writer Pliny the Younger, who witnessed the eruption from across the bay, later described the cloud as rising like a pine tree, with a tall trunk and branches spreading at the top. For the people of Pompeii, the sky changed. Day began to turn into darkness. Ash and pumice began falling from above. At first, some may have stared in shock. Others may have run into houses. Some may have gathered belongings. Some may have tried to leave immediately. But many probably waited, hoping the danger would pass. Humans often do this. When disaster begins, people try to understand it using normal experience. They think, maybe it will stop. Maybe we can wait. Maybe the danger is not as bad as it looks. But Vesuvius was not stopping. The falling pumice became heavier. Stones rained from the sky. Roofs began to collect the weight of volcanic material. Streets filled with ash and rock. People covered their heads with pillows, cloth, or anything they could find. Breathing became difficult. Darkness thickened. The air filled with dust. The city that had been full of voices became a place of confusion and fear. Some people tried to escape through the streets. Others hid inside homes, cellars, and shops. Some stayed to protect property. Some went back for money, jewelry, documents, or family members. Every decision could mean life or death. The tragedy of Pompeii was not one single instant. It unfolded in stages. At first, the danger came from falling material. Pumice and ash buried streets and damaged buildings. People who stayed indoors risked being crushed when roofs collapsed under the weight. People who went outside risked being struck, trapped, blinded, or lost in darkness. The city became harder and harder to escape. Roads disappeared. Doors jammed. Courtyards filled. The familiar streets of Pompeii turned into a maze of ash. But the worst was still coming. While Pompeii was suffering under falling pumice, nearby towns faced different horrors. Herculaneum, another town near Vesuvius, was closer to the volcano and was eventually hit by deadly pyroclastic surges, fast-moving waves of superheated gas, ash, and volcanic material. These surges could kill almost instantly. They were not slow rivers of lava like many people imagine. They were burning clouds moving with terrifying speed. The people in their path had almost no chance. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings about Pompeii and Vesuvius. The city was not simply covered by lava. Pompeii was buried mainly by volcanic ash and pumice, and many victims died from collapsing buildings, suffocation, heat, or deadly surges that arrived later. The eruption was not just fire. It was darkness, weight, poison, heat, and speed. As the hours passed, Pompeii became a city under siege by nature. Imagine trying to escape while the sky is falling. Imagine walking through streets that no longer look like streets. Imagine ash filling your mouth, your eyes, your lungs. Imagine hearing buildings crack under the weight. Imagine not knowing where your family is. Imagine the sun disappearing in the middle of the day. Some people probably moved toward the city gates. Some may have tried to reach the sea. Some may have believed boats could save them. Others stayed in houses hoping walls would protect them. But walls built by humans are weak against a volcano. The eruption continued into the night. Darkness became almost complete. The world must have felt like it was ending. In Roman religion, people believed in gods, omens, and divine anger. Many must have thought this was punishment from the gods. Some may have prayed to Jupiter, Venus, Apollo, or household gods. Some may have begged for mercy. But the mountain gave no answer. The next morning brought the final disaster. Pyroclastic surges reached Pompeii. These waves of hot gas and ash moved across the landscape and entered the city. For those still alive, there was little chance to escape. The heat, toxic gases, and ash overwhelmed them. Many died where they stood, where they hid, or where they fell. Families died together. People died clutching valuables. Some died covering their faces. Some died in doorways, streets, rooms, and courtyards. A city of daily life became a city of final moments. Then silence came. Pompeii was buried. Its streets disappeared. Its houses disappeared. Its markets, bakeries, temples, paintings, and bodies disappeared under layers of volcanic material. The city was not destroyed in the way many ancient cities were destroyed by armies. It was sealed. Time stopped. The same ash that killed Pompeii also preserved it. And that is why, centuries later, Pompeii would become one of the most important archaeological discoveries in the world. After the eruption, Pompeii was gone from the surface of the world. Survivors, if they escaped early enough, could not return to the city they knew. The landscape had changed. Streets were buried. Buildings were hidden. The coastline and surrounding area were transformed. Over time, memory faded. People knew that ancient towns had been destroyed, but the exact city slowly disappeared from daily life. Pompeii became buried not only under ash, but under centuries of forgetting. And then, many centuries later, people began to rediscover it. Excavations revealed something extraordinary. Pompeii was not like many ancient ruins where only a few broken stones remained. Pompeii was a frozen Roman city. Streets were still there. Walls were still there. Paintings were still on houses. Political messages and graffiti were still visible. Bakeries still had ovens. Shops still had counters. Villas still had mosaics. Public baths, theaters, temples, fountains, and homes emerged from the ground. It was as if the city had been paused by death and preserved for the future. Archaeologists found bread in ovens, tools in workshops, jars in shops, and paintings on walls. They found evidence of meals, business, religion, entertainment, and ordinary routines. Pompeii became a window into Roman daily life more vivid than almost anywhere else. We can walk through its streets today and see how people lived nearly 2,000 years ago. We can see where they cooked, where they slept, where they bought food, where they worshipped, where they relaxed, where they argued, and where they tried to survive. But the most haunting discoveries were the human remains. In the 19th century, archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli developed a method that made Pompeii even more famous and even more emotional. When bodies had decomposed inside the hardened ash, they left empty spaces. Fiorelli's team poured plaster into those spaces, creating casts of the victims' final positions. The result was devastating. These were not just skeletons. They were shapes of people at the moment death found them. A person curled up. A person covering their face. A child near an adult. A dog twisted in its final struggle. The cast made the tragedy personal. They turned an ancient disaster into human faces, human bodies, and human fear. This is why Pompeii still moves people today. It is not only an archaeological site, it is a city of interrupted lives. When we think of ancient Rome, we often think of emperors, armies, gladiators, marble statues, and giant monuments. Pompeii shows us something different. It shows us ordinary people. A baker, a seller, a servant, a mother, a child, a painter, a worker, a rich homeowner, a poor laborer. People who did not know they would become part of history. They were not trying to be remembered. They were trying to live. And that makes their story feel strangely close to us. The eruption of Vesuvius also reminds us that nature does not care about human confidence. Pompeii had walls, wealth, religion, culture, trade, and Roman power behind it. But none of that could stop the volcano. Rome was one of the greatest civilizations in history, yet a mountain destroyed a Roman city in a day. This is one reason the story is so powerful. It shows the limits of human control. Civilizations can build roads, armies, laws, and temples, but they still live under the power of the earth. Today, Mount Vesuvius is still there. It is still one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world because millions of people live near it. Modern science can monitor volcanoes better than the Romans ever could. We can study earthquakes, gas emissions, ground deformation, and volcanic history. We can create evacuation plans. But the danger is not gone. Pompeii is not only a story about the past, it is a warning for the future. The people of Pompeii did not understand the mountain above them. We understand more, but we still cannot control everything. One of the most interesting things about Pompeii is how normal it was before the eruption. That may sound simple, but it matters. Disasters often feel unreal until they happen. People imagine history as a series of dramatic moments, but most disasters begin on ordinary days. People wake up. They work, they talk, they plan. They worry about money, food, family, love, business, and weather. They do not wake up thinking they are living the last day of their city. That is what happened in Pompeii. The final day was once a normal morning. And then the sky changed. Some historians debate the exact date of the eruption. The traditional date is August 24th, 79 AD, based on ancient manuscripts, but some evidence suggests it may have happened later in the year, possibly in autumn. But whether it happened in August or later, the meaning remains the same. In 79 AD, Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii, Herculaneum, and nearby communities, creating one of the most famous disasters in history. The fall of Pompeii was not caused by war, politics, or betrayal. It was caused by the earth itself. And unlike a battle, there was no enemy to negotiate with, no king to surrender to, no army to defeat. There was only the mountain, the ash, the heat, and the darkness. Pompeii's tragedy is also its gift to history. Because the city was buried so quickly and preserved so completely, it teaches us more about Roman life than many surviving texts. We can see the colors on walls, the layout of homes, the words people scratched into plaster, the food they ate, the shops they used, and the spaces where they gathered. Pompeii is not just a death story. It is also a life story. The reason the city matters is not only because it ended, but because it shows us what existed before the end. In that sense, Pompeii is both a warning and a memory. It warns us that life can change in an instant. It reminds us that ancient people were not so different from us. They had homes, jokes, worries, ambitions, pets, families, food, art, politics, and routines. They lived in a world that felt stable until it was not. And when Vesuvius erupted, it did not only bury buildings, it buried a moment in human time. Today, millions of people visit Pompeii. They walk on the same stones where Romans walked. They enter houses that once had owners. They stand in bakeries where bread was made. They look at paintings that survived under ash. They see the casts of people who never escaped. And for a moment, the distance between past and present becomes smaller. Pompeii stops feeling like ancient history and begins to feel like a warning whispered across 2,000 years. The story of Pompeii is terrifying because it is sudden. It is fascinating because it is preserved. It is heartbreaking because it is human. And it is unforgettable because it captures one of history's most powerful truths. Ordinary days can become historic disasters without warning. In 79 AD, Pompeii was alive. By the next day, it was buried. The people who lived there did not know they were about to become symbols of one of the greatest disasters in history. They were simply living their lives beneath a mountain. Then Vesuvius woke up, the sky turned black, and an entire city vanished under ash.